So we have it in. Oh. So welcome everybody to today's coffee break with Mike Taylor. It's our last one of the season. We pick back up in January with new topics. So today Mike's going to be covering Boyum B1UP Kanban dashboards. And Mike, I want you to explain what it is exactly, because up until the presentation I saw this morning in the French session, I had no clue what this was, and it was very interesting.
I have a graphic for that.
Okay,
So
good. Thanks.
we
you.
will. All right. Thanks, Tracy.
Thanks, Mike.
Here we go. All right. Hello, everybody. It's Mike Taylor. So the agenda today, what is a Kanban? I thought, like Tracy said, people perhaps aren't familiar with it. There are some portals, like people are using Trello. It's like similar to Trello boards, if you've ever used that, but I have a little graphic here. So what is a Kanban board? A Kanban board is basically just a board. It has kind of these columns, and then within the columns you have the various notes or different things that you want to track. So within the context of SAP Business One, I'll give you a few examples, but it could be like sales opportunities is the one I'm going to use, but it could be anything from like your orders to activities or anything really. And the different columns are kind of representing the different status options. And generally it's kind of, you know, a left to right kind of progression of statuses. So, you know, it appears on the left side, maybe it's kind of unsorted. And then these notes either move to the different columns to represent where they are in the process, or they can be taken off, like thrown into blocked or closed. But it allows you to kind of organize things into columns. It should make more sense when I get to SAP with that. So today I'm going to, we talked about what is a Kanban board. I'm going to enable the dashboards and just quickly show you if you have a B1UP. You will need B1UP for this, by the way. If you didn't catch that in the name of the webinar and stuff, you do need the add-on B1UP. I really recommend it. This is another example of just something that comes with the basic B1UP system. It's hard to sell sometimes because it's so many different things. I think it is a requirement for using SAP Business One. But it's not always something that you can you don't just turn it on and it does one function. You turn it on and it gives you 1,000 functions. And this is just one of the things that's included out of the box, that you might have had B1UP forever and never even thought about using this. So it's kind of the reason we do these coffee breaks, is to give you those ideas. And maybe you have a business process you would like to map into a Kanban style board. So we're going to get into that more. So I'll just talk about enabling the dashboards really quickly. There's 2 requirements, just if you just don't even know how to see them. I'll show an example of like my favorite kind of use of it, and I'll talk a little bit about the editing of the dashboards and some of the options. I'm not going to get too technical, and I'll show you a couple of other examples after we talk about editing. Then we'll jump into questions. So you can see I have my dashboards enabled already. So if you see this, you don't have to do the first steps I'm about to show you. But if you want to enable the dashboards, you would obviously need B1UP. But modules, administration, add-ons, B1 Usability Package, and make sure you have this running. So if you don't see this, that's kind of the first sign you don't have B1UP. What you want to do is go to the license administration, and generally if you're running B1UP, all users on your system should be running it. Again, like the consistency of the form settings and the item placement, you don't want some users to be looking at the sidebar and some users to have the fields placed in the actual forms. I won't go too much on about that, but most users should have it if you do have a B1UP. Click license administration. And I mean, all users should have it. technically speaking. So I just have this is just my test system. So make sure that the user you want has this checked. They again should have it checked. So as long as they're running B1UP, they have the first requirement. The second requirement is to actually enable it for that user. So you want to go to administration, add-ons, B1 usability package, B1 usability config. You need to check this box. So if this was unchecked, you check it. But if the box is unchecked, don't check it in the middle of the day because it's going to kick everybody out and make a few more tables and fields. So don't click this and then update it if it was unchecked. If it's fully unchecked, best practices is to back up your database after hours when there's no users, back up the database, check the box, push update. You'll see a bunch of status bar updates like adding fields, adding tables. Fundamentally, a customer can do it. Like you could do it yourself. It's no problem. Just be aware that if you do that in the middle of the day, it will kick everything off. Your Project connections, it will kick all users, and it could cause issues. I've never seen it cause direct corruption per se, but just best practices, remember to wait till after hours, kick everybody off, or I mean, if you can coordinate the day, you could do that too, but generally wait till after hours, come in here, back it up on the server, back up your database on the server, come into this menu, modules administration, add-ons, B1 usability package, B1 usability config, and check the box, push update. So once you've done that, like I can do that because I don't have, I already had it on, so it won't do the status bar. You won't see in the status bar it making any tables because I had it already checked. Obviously you can see it's on. And then there's one more step. Once this is enabled for the organization and the tables and fields are created, you can click this ellipses button. And once you have this going, you need to make sure this is include, not exclude. Some versions seem to default to exclude, but what we want is generally we're including and then we're checking the users we want. Okay. Check the users you want, push OK, get them to log out of SAP and then back in, and then they will have the dashboards. If you are very organized, what you can actually do is enable that, or don't enable them first. You can actually click the gear, impersonate, and you can impersonate another user and actually edit their dashboards prior to them having it enabled. Okay, I'm not going to go too much into that. You can look at the B1UP dashboard.
Mike, I just have a little question for you though.
Yeah.
When you say that that when you go in and you do that and it gives everybody their dashboards, maybe there's some people that will have dashboards that you don't want them to have.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what I'm kind of limitedly trying to explain. Basically, before you go in here and enable them, like say you're going to enable it for somebody who just gets a Kanban board, enable the dashboards for the organization and for yourself. Get to this point, but before you check, say you're giving, let's just say fake person named Bob, say you're going to give Bob only the Kanban board, you can click, once you get to this point for yourself, these are basically the default dashboards, click gear, impersonate, and then find Bob, and then log into Bob's, you can actually impersonate Bob. And this is really neat because you can edit and take out, I'll show you the tabs in a second, but you can actually edit and take out certain tabs. So gear, add, edit, view settings. I'm getting a little off my direction here, but you can actually go in, impersonate Bob, set what Bob is going to see prior to you actually checking that box. So you can look back at our other B1UP sessions for that. I just wanted to kind of refresh just a little bit on that. So gear, impersonate. When you impersonate another user, you can actually make all the changes, change their widgets, change their tabs and everything. And then when you give them the ability to log in, it won't show say the sales one or the finance one and all those things. So they'll be limited to just what you show them. And every user can have all different dashboards too. So keep that in mind. So I'm going to show you how to add your own tab and how to add widgets. But basically you would do the same process just while you've impersonated another user. So you can see this is me, but if I impersonated Bob, whatever changes you make will change on them. So just a note on that is if they are actually logged in and using the dashboards while you're impersonating them and trying to make changes, it's kind of 50-50 if those changes are going to save. So if you're going to impersonate them, it's better to have them log out, you impersonate them, change whatever you're going to change, and then get them to log back in. It's more consistent. You can also transfer views between users. So you can transfer, you do the gear and transfer views between users. So you can go from me, check, and then you can actually copy it to, so Bob's enabled. I can go copy just the sales one to the user Bob, say for example, and then I can execute and it will just copy that one dashboard over to them, and that'll save you some time copying things between users. So if there's a team, you can check a bunch, copy them over there too. So that's just, again, I'm trying not to get too far off topic. You can ask questions later if there's any more questions on that, but basically you can impersonate, copy, and change things to protect the data. You can also restrict using the edit dashboards. Again, I'm way off topic a little bit here, but you can actually restrict what users can use these particular widgets. So you can go gear, edit dashboard widgets. And then if you just restrict this to include only a user group, maybe you have just a user group that's a management user group, or you want to check individual users, you can just restrict this. So even if that particular user tries to add the widget, it'll just show you do not have permission to view it anyways. So anyway, a little bit off topic, but the dashboards I think are a little bit underused, quite easy to get started with, and huge value, I think, huge value for all users to have some sort of dashboard. I feel like it just promotes like buy into the system, like just feeling like you're part of the data. Like you can give yourself like, you come in, boom, you know what your metrics are. You can see, you can have a list of documents that you can process, what's next in kind of your hopper of what you're doing. You can have all your links here with the sales process. It's good for having people, remember the different steps. You can have KPIs in here. This one's primarily KPIs, but you can also have like where you can drill down into documents and everything too. So anyway, big fan of that. Off track a little bit. So what I'm going to do to get back on track is I'm going to show you how to add a new tab and how to add the Kanban widget to that. Gear, everything's done from this gear. As long as you're a super user, you can do it. So this is, I wish this was add, edit, view settings. I wish this was add, edit, dashboard tabs or add, edit tabs. That's how I think about it. So each one of these tabs can be a combination of widgets. So you can actually see this is one widget here, two widgets. So the common functions is a widget, the sales process map is a widget, and the open items list is a widget. So you can make your own tabs and then you can combine any of the widgets that you want. So in this case, you could have just a full sales overview and it could just be this. You probably wouldn't do just open items list here. I mean, you can always maximize these as you go, but you can combine them to make the most efficient use of the combination of widgets. Maybe you don't want common functions, but I think something like this is pretty standard. So first, to do that, you just need another tab, just a blank tab. So add, edit, tabs, we'll call this. It says view settings, doesn't make much sense. Add, so I'm just going to call it Kanban. Okay. Restore it, refreshes, but now I have just a blank tabs, right? So if I think of this as add, edit, tabs, that's perfect. Now I need to add widgets to it. So I'm just going to add the Kanban one. That's what we're talking about today, but you can add more than one. So gear, add new widget. You have all these guys here. Some of them are custom, some of them are standard, some of them are like functional, some of them are like, again, custom data, more data style ones. So you have a lot of different things. If you're using the SAP cockpit, they've basically recreated quite a bit of the functionality of that, from the messages and alerts to like world clocks, You can just put an SQL report in there too. And so you can basically, I would say, turn off as an organization the SAP cockpit ones, and you can replace that with your common functions and your open items list and your messages and alerts. And then you can also bring in the fancier schmancier dashboards here. So these are the big ones, and these can be very, very in-depth, customized filters. You see our other coffee breaks, like these can be incredibly detailed. But so for today, I'm just going to use the Kanban board one. So you can see it comes in as a widget. It's not fully sized. So I just drag this to be the full size. If I was impersonating Bob, I would do the exact same thing as this. I would just have it impersonated first. So you can see I've dragged this widget to be wide here. So it fits the size of the dashboard area. And I will select a Kanban board here. So you can see, just like my example image, you can see that this is sales opportunity. So you have the different columns. This is just a very simple sales process. But I've tried to just do as many different options in this to show all the different features as possible. So you can see you have the percentage bar, 25%, 50%. If this had been changed, you can see that. But also, if you want, you can move them between the different columns without going into the SOP. And you can see it updates. Okay, so it's really neat. Again, the progression left to right generally, I don't know, I guess as, just as a standard reading, kind of North American reading style, left to right, it's kind of, that's natural for me to think of left as the start and right as the finish. So that's how I kind of think of it. You don't have to go, you can drag it to different, it doesn't have to go in order. You can use the coding to add all sorts of visual highlighting. I'll show you a little bit of the code there too. So I have some that have different colored backgrounds. You can highlight the different, like this caption, and you can also drill right into them too. So I'll double click, drills right into the data. So it's super nice. Gives you an example of kind of where you are. And you could combine a Kanban, say you had a Kanban widget, and then maybe you had an SOP summary widget at the bottom that just had your own summary with, maybe some other KPIs of where you are with the different, how much you have in weighted average, in the potential amount, how much you have in each phase of the sales process, each stage. So you can combine them really nicely. But for the Kanban, you also have these cool little options here. So you can hold your mouse over here and it has these hover options. So if you've used sales opportunities much, you have a predicted close date, which is pretty important. So you can go in from here and actually change the predicted close date without drilling in. It's not a lot of work, but frankly, if you work with some sales teams, they don't want to do any extra clicks. Let's say it that way. So you can do it right from the board. You can also change the potential amount. So you can just update that potential amount there right from the board without having even to drill in. And then if you're moving things along, boom, put it to the next phase and walk away and continue to make your phone calls and do whatever you do. You can also filter here. So there's a filter where you have a little bit of a search. So I'm just going to search for testing, and it will filter just for those particular opportunities. So if you have a lot of data on here, this is not a lot of data, you can actually go and filter for that using this nice little filter feature. So as with most things with B1UP, there is no barrier to entry to get people into doing customization. You can view all the information that I can view. Basically, they have a lot of videos. They have a lot of help documentation. The missing ingredient is kind of obsessive compulsive, just curiosity, we'll say. So if you break out some time, creative time where you just sit down and you have some sort of small thing that you want to do, or do the videos and then just copy what they have done and mess around with it to try to get a sense of how the code works. It is a really good way to start. If you do not feel comfortable with that, or you have more of just an idea and you want help with that, we are more than happy to help to realize that goal of where you're trying to get to. But obviously you get the most out of it when you kind of understand the language that you want to speak with this, and you potentially work with the users to get the most amount of benefit from this Kanban board. So these are really not, it's not static. This is something that comes out of the box, the SOPs basically. I've made it kind of wonky colors and stuff, but it'll just be kind of a little bit more plain looking. But you can come in here and you can customize all of these things here. So if I go click the ellipses button in the top, click edit this Kanban board, you're going to see the configuration. So if you're a super user, you can see this. And they use a lot of different, what they call I think they call it HTML-like. So you need a little bit of familiarity with SQL. This is pretty basic, I would think. And then you need to get the most out of it, a little bit of familiarity with HTML as well. And I have a little HTML inspired text formatting guide. So if you watch the video, the Kanban introduction video, this is the B1UP BoyumIT Solutions Kanban introduction. They have a ton of videos on Kanban board formatting. They'll refer you to this HTML-like formatting. It's not full HTML, but you have a lot of flexibility to build, different text things, use dynamic bold formatting. Some of this isn't applicable, but a lot of this stuff does work, including the different colors. So I have some colors down here. Where is my color list? Oh, color list is in here. So you can see on the Boyum side, on the add edit Kanban board help document, they explain it very specifically. They refer to their video e-learnings, and they have the list of different colors. So you can go nuts, and this is as good as you're going to get. You can experiment with this, as I mentioned. Use HTML inspired text formatting, which allows you to do things like making the labels bold. I just messed around with this. So some of it's black font, some of it's gray, just as an example. The titles are bold. So you could have customer, phone information. You could have like last activity note. You could do all sorts of different things in that and display whatever you want to display that makes it work for you. You can also do custom navigation universal functions. So you can do it where if you move it between the different columns, you can do a lot of different stuff. You can do custom functions in there. So for the navigation, when you double click, you can have it double click and you can use a universal function to go to a specific spot. So say, just as an example with the sales opportunities, if you wanted to always go to the stages tab, you can make a custom navigation universal function when you double click, and it'll just auto switch to the stages tab for you. Weird little things like that. You can use these keywords and build them into your query. And this is fundamentally where the data is going to come from. And then the columns are built by this query. So this query basically just takes, in this case, the sales opportunity stages and makes the stages into the columns. So you could filter the columns, you could build your own columns manually, you could filter only for certain columns. Like maybe if you switch it into invoicing or something, then you want it off a particular Kanban board or whatnot. So you can basically build the columns and then build the data as the association. You can increase and decrease the card size, the height. So you can make it smaller, much smaller. You can make it much bigger. I'll show you that in the project management. You can have like the column move action. I got a little bit confused earlier, but generally you have the standard ones. So this is for the opportunity stages. When you move it between them, it moves the opportunity stage. You can switch a header UDF, so you can make your own internal, if you're using your own internal status UDFs, you can use those. You can set documents to approved or not approved. A whole bunch of other different things here, including a custom UDF. So this is kind of the, I think the most interesting for me, because you can use anything. I'm sure you can use a dynamic syntax universal function and have it work, and you can move it between specific columns and have things just change in the background. So I think if you have some idea for moving, between these columns and the shape of the data kind of works for you, you can kind of sort of do anything you really want to with this. Depending on the object, you have different hover actions. These are a little less customizable. It would be amazing if you could have your own icons and do that, but at this point, it's not an option. You can launch the Kanban board as a universal function too. It doesn't even need to be in the dashboard kind of area. So that's another completely different thing too. But in this case, we're just talking about it as a dashboard widget. Tons of options. Remember to use your BoyumIT help. Tons of videos there. They're going to refer you to the help guide. You could just search for this. It's all public and you can read through here. It'll refer you to the videos again, and then they'll refer you also to this. This, I guess, is the framework that they use in order to do that. So if you're a little bit familiar with SQL, a little bit familiar with HTML, you can really go crazy and make this really neat. So it can conditionally color the backgrounds for different things to notify people. I really like to do really custom things where you can have the user really just look at it and see where their status is immediately, no messing around. And I feel like that's kind of a limitation of a lot of like new users in SAP. They appreciate that everything's in one place, but they don't know where to get the data. Okay, and that's why the dashboards, I think, open up a whole new world. And so I'll just show you a couple quick other out of the box options. Of course, this can be fully custom. It can be sales orders. It could be anything you need, but I'm going to select a different one, just show you some different ones. So we'll go projects. So this one's a little bit wider. It has different columns. So you can, again, move these between the different things. It will literally update them. So this is a little bit of a project board. You can have percentages based on whatever you want, fulfillment of a specifically linked sales order. You can kind of fill this out however you want. And again, kind of very quick and easy to see where things are. You can do out of the box your production orders. I didn't go too crazy on this, but you can move these, and it has functionality to move them between the different sections. So if you do go to closed, it will try to close it. Remember, it follows the rules of the DI API. So I actually have to move it to released first. Then once it's released, I can close it. But you have to remember, you can't just move it back. So unlike some of the soft documents like sales opportunities, you can't just flip it to closed and flip it back to released. It still has to respect the SAP logic. Once you close it, you can't reopen it. So, but having said that, you could have more status items here. So you could have different priorities. You could drag this using a UDF to different machines. You could change all sorts of different things and get a lot more out of this and make a production dashboard. And the last one, if you use service calls is the same thing. I just have a very simple example here, but just so you can maybe get your creative juices flowing, and you can have a bunch of different status options. You can have all sorts of different things and move this through. You can filter this for the user that's logged in. You can have all sorts of different things with the filter to have exactly what you need for that. So that's it for me. I hope you kind of learned something about Kanban boards, or any questions.
I have one here, Mike.
Okay.
Hi, Melina. Is it possible to create Kanban board to see progress from sales order to invoices? So by looking at it, it is clear how many orders are still waiting. I'd say yes to that, Melina, but I'll let Mike show you how it's done. We saw it in the French section this morning.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great use case.
Which was fun. That was an interesting scenario to see, because, yeah.
Yeah, you could kind of sort of use it like a pick release process. And like I was kind of saying, you don't have to use this as full, even if you had just ready to pick, release to pick, I would be interested in going back to look at the French, even if I don't understand it fully, just to see what Robert did in the earlier session. I didn't actually see it. But yeah, you could definitely do that. And you don't even have to have this percentage, but the percentage could be switched to be fulfillment. So you could have like the number, it could be 0% fulfillment, and then you can take, a total, a weighted average total of how much has been delivered out of there. So if there's a back order, you might have 2% left or 10% left, and then you can flip it into a back order status. You would probably, for a sales order, use a custom UDF. So it would be, you'd have like a pick status or pick process status, and then move them between there. Or if you like, you could just do, you could do a little bit more complicated SQL and have one column just be sales order, one column just be delivery, one column be invoice. I'm trying to think if you want to move them between. I don't believe it has out of the box capability to copy. Let me see. Yeah, I don't think it out of the box has a copy between. I could probably do a universal function to like a custom C# SDK one to move them. Like if you did go from an order to a delivery, it could do the delivery in the background, assuming, if you had to select batches, it wouldn't work, say, for example. Yeah, there's a lot of options. There's definitely a lot of options here. So I don't know if I answered the question exactly there, but yeah, if you can visualize it, yeah, we can build it.
Any other questions? And also, just while waiting, in case someone does, I just want to remind everybody that there's a price increase for Boyum as of January 1st. And I notice a lot of you in here who already have Boyum. So if you think you will be needing licenses, be it Produmex, Boyum, or print and delivery, whatever, there's quite a price increase in January. I already sent out a mailing to everybody explaining what they were, but feel free to reach out if you have any questions on that. So I have another question here, Mike.
Sure.
What does the user interface look like when you have dozens of items in a column?
Yeah, that's a great question. Probably the best representation of it is what I have is production orders. So it looks like it just stacks them. So you can sort them. You can sort it and put them in the same order. So this has 7 and this has 6. But yeah, I mean, if you have dozens working in there, you'd want to make sure that you split it. So say if it's on production, you have either like production lines, or if you're working with something that's like a sales opportunity, you have this broken down to the user. But if you have, like, say you have hundreds of items, you probably want more something where it's summarized. So this is a little bit of a different view, totally different thing, but it has items on the left, and then it has related documents on the right. So say you had, 20, like this is a combination of orders and POs, and then you can click on a specific item, and then on the right side, it'll show you just related documents to that. So if you had dozens relating to a particular item, there might be different ways for you to do that view rather than a Kanban. So Kanban is kind of a specific, I mean, if you have, say you have, say you are doing this SOPs and you get leads just thrown into the hopper every day, you would then, I would say, take a step back and say, like, don't even like put this lead, and lead could have, 75 options. And then you can maybe have them sorted by whether it's hot, cold, whether, maybe you rank them in their lead quality, so you can sort them, and then have more columns. So you can go from lead, or maybe just like, unclaimed opportunities, and then you can move them into your process so that, yeah, maybe you have one row that has a lot, and then each of the individual ones you're working on, has like, say, 10 or something. The other thing is you can shrink the size of this up a lot. So you could shrink the size of the card, maybe half the size, Keep in mind, you're going to lose some of the spacing, but then it would allow you to put more on the screen. And you could definitely shrink up these labels. These labels could be like just C, P, S, and then C again, or whatever. You know, you can make them really compact in order to get a lot of data on the screen if you still like this format, depending on what you're doing.
There's also, Mike, too, if you have like more columns, you could have a slide bar to move over if you have even more columns than what your screen size permits.
Yeah, left to right, exactly. Yeah, that's a good point. I have a pretty, like, I'm 1920 by 1200 on this, so and then vertically it's like that. So yeah, if you'd have to think about it again, like to make it usable, you would want some sort of indicator of like, what am I working on? So even with the sales opportunities, if you have kind of maybe like a miscellaneous lead, like I said, maybe rank them, maybe use a date if you're processing them one at a time, so that you kind of focus on what's at the top, so that either the newest floats to the top, and then you're working kind of sort of in the upper visual area. And then as you're working through them, I mean, as a human, you can only do one kind of thing at a time. So even if you had 75 in the column, it doesn't matter. You're not moving 75 by yourself all at once. So focusing your attention would probably be a smart way of visualizing data in a Kanban board.
Yeah, that's good. Any other questions, anybody? Seems no, I don't see any here. So look, if anybody has any questions, you've got my email. You can reach out anytime. And if you want somebody else to do these things for you and not play with the system yourself, we have consultants like Mike and many others, you know, that Mike's our kingpin on Boyum, but that can help you out, and they can help you even just discuss with you and see what possibilities you have. So thank you very much, Mike. Very interesting.
Absolutely.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you
And
very
have
much.
a great weekend.
Bye for now.
Bye.